Recorded Books presents The 6 Types of Working Genius, a better way to understand your gifts, your frustrations, and your team, by Patrick Lencioni, narrated by Ray Porter. Introduction. This book is based on 2 undeniable truths. First, people who utilize their natural, God-given talents are much more fulfilled and successful than those who don't. Second, teams and organizations that help people tap into their God-given talents are much more successful and productive than those that don't. As obvious as all this may be, the reality remains that most people aren't terribly fulfilled in their work, which makes sense because most people don't really understand their work-related gifts. As a result, most teams don't come anywhere close to tapping into their members' talents and achieving their true potential. The question that has to be asked is, why haven't we solved this problem yet? It's certainly not because we haven't tried. There are several wonderful tools out there that help us better understand our personalities and our preferences. I've been using many of them for years. The problem has always been trying to figure out how they translate to the day-to-day experience of doing real work, of every kind, and with teammates who have different gifts. I am happy to be able to say that the 6 Types of Working Genius solves that very problem. Not only does it provide a framework for quickly understanding your unique talents, it does so within the context of a new model for how any type of work gets done. In other words, it's as much a productivity tool as it is a personality model. I have to admit that I didn't sit down one day to try to solve this problem. It came about largely by accident. I was simply struggling with my own fluctuations between joy and exasperation at work, and someone, thank you, Amy, asked me the big question. Why are you like this? It wasn't an accusation or a judgment, but a real question, asked out of curiosity and a desire to help me figure out why I was too frequently frustrated working in my own company with good friends in a field that I thoroughly enjoyed. I had no idea that answering that question would provoke the advent of the model that I present in this book. And I certainly didn't know that it would lead to an assessment that has already proven more practical and immediately helpful in changing people's lives, including my own, than anything we've ever done at the Table Group. From finding more joy in their jobs, to having a better understanding of their spouse or children, to reorganizing their teams to better align with team members' geniuses, we have been gladly overwhelmed by the stories sent to us by people who have found immediate and lasting relief through the Working Genius model and assessment. Like most of my books, the first part is a fable that provides a fictional but realistic story around working genius and its application. The second part is a thorough overview of the model itself. I pray that the 6 Types of Working Genius will allow you and those you work with to become the people God created you to be, and that your team, organization, and even family will benefit as a result. The Fable. Job. Work isn't life, but it's a big part of it. And though I wish it weren't true, for years, it had a more frustrating impact on mine than I wanted or expected. Thankfully, I recently figured some things out that made that impact much more positive, and just in the nick of time, because my life was about to unravel. I'm Bull Brooks, by the way. I know that sounds like I should be a musician, either country or rap, depending on how you look at it. My real name is Jeremiah, but somehow because of that 70s song about the frog, people started calling me Bull when I was a kid, and it stuck. Everyone but my kids calls me Bull. I suppose one day even they might use that moniker, but for now it's still Dad. My full name is actually Jeremiah Octavian Brooks, which is a handful, or a mouthful. St. Octavian was a martyr back in the 5th century, and for some reason that I don't recall her telling me, my mom must have liked him. One of the interesting things about all this is that my initials are J.O.B. I suppose that I shouldn't be surprised that I've developed something of an obsession with work. But enough about me and my crazy name. Let me tell you about how work almost ruined me, and what I learned that changed everything. Work. I should probably start by explaining my earliest understanding of work, which came from my parents. What I remember most about my dad's job is that he didn't seem to choose it freely. I mean, without a college education and living in a relatively unsophisticated town, there weren't a ton of options. Being an insurance adjuster, I have to admit that I didn't completely understand what that meant until I got into my first car accident, isn't the most fascinating job in the world, but it's not the worst one either. He had time for the family and spent at least half his time indoors. As for my mom, she ran our household and organized most of what happened there. She seemed to like almost every aspect of her work, whether it was teaching us to read, volunteering at school, or paying the bills. Other than the laundry, which she wisely and effectively delegated to us, she never complained about her daily work, and often declared that every day with us was a joy. I think she honestly meant it. But whether my dad liked his job or not, I can't say. It wasn't really a topic of conversation, or perhaps consideration. Other than the time he said, "Bull, if it was fun, they wouldn't call it work." It didn't really cross my mind whether he found his job fulfilling or not. For my dad, work was something you did to pay the mortgage and tuition at St. Catherine of Siena School. Enough said. It was only after having my own first job working as a bank teller that I decided my dad's approach to labor would not be my own. Lawn mowing. Speaking of my dad, he was a great guy. In the 50s, people would have called him swell, though I'm not sure why I need to tell you that. He was affable and responsible and frugal. Swell. One of his favorite activities was the Saturday morning ritual of mowing the lawn. Of course, it wasn't just mowing. That was the fun part, and it was reserved mostly for Dad. It also involved raking leaves, picking up leaves, pulling weeds, hoeing weeds, sweeping things, and picking up things, followed by the grand finale of spraying off the driveway and sidewalk with the power hose. Because I obeyed my dad, I pulled myself out of bed and went outside every Saturday when what I really wanted to be doing was watching cartoons or Major League Baseball on TV. But I helped him mow the lawn. And I hated it. I never really understood why, and it bothered me because I loved my dad.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.